This episode is all about Mark's journey to hell to fight for the devil. Not against, but for the devil. But it's not how it sounds. It's not a bad thing. There's someone worse in hell than Satan, and I'll explain that when I get there. A lot of this was new to the show. However, it does take two minor characters from the comics, Darkblood and Volcanica, and gives them a new story. So let's talk about all the new stuff and all the things changed from the comics in episode 4. It gets its name from the number of times they say Even Mark gets a chance to say it. It starts off with Mark talking to Art about how he's been feeling lately after he did what he did to that innocent man to stop the Sequids. Mark says he's worried about becoming more like his dad, and this is how Art responds.
There'd have to be a lot more death and destruction in your wake to make you like your dad, Mark.
Mark says he doesn't deserve to wear the Invincible suit anymore, so to remind him of his more hopeful younger self, Art offers him his old yellow and blue suit back. But Mark declines, and this talk ends when he gets called for his job at Invincible Inc. But in the comics, Art says that his father is a good man, and that being like him isn't a bad thing. The rest of the conversation goes about the same way as in the show. He calls the suit a curse, and Art gives him a new costume. One that is very similar to the original, but it isn't fingerless, and it doesn't have knee pads. Later on, it returns to the original suit. So the show just skipped the whole new suit thing and went straight back to the original. Because the only reason it was changed back in the first place was because Kirkman regretted the new yellow suit. Later on, we see he was actually called to fight the mummy guy that's only been referenced in the show a few times as a joke. The most recent time was during the Invincible War, when one of the Mark variants was almost possessed by him. The mummy refuses to take over a woman's body, instead choosing to wait for a male. So the woman escapes and calls Invincible Inc. Mark shows up but is summoned to hell in the middle of the fight. That's when the mummy decides to just take over a woman, and he may cause some problems later on. Or it'll just continue to be a small side gag. I honestly have no interest in them taking this any further than that. Then Damien Darkblood and a team of demons face off against Volcanica. Volcanica is a villain that is not new to the show. However, her role in the comics was different and much smaller. I didn't even remember her when I first watched this. She first appeared in issue 107. That is where she talks to a transformed Doc Seismic, telling him that she wishes to conquer the surface with his help. Their attack fails, but they both retreat, and that is the last we see of either of them in the comics. All this new Damien Darkblood stuff was something Kirkman wanted to add to the comics, but never did. Darkblood was basically a joke in the comics. Cecil never sent him back to hell, but he also didn't play a very important role in uncovering the truth of what happened to the Guardians. He had no idea that it was Nolan that killed the Guardians. At least not until after everyone else knew, so he was basically just a joke to everyone. Volcanica has the Magma Knights on her side, but she's able to solo their entire team by herself. She's made of lava, so you can't really kill her, because she can always put herself back together. Darkblood is spared and he takes his team back to the devil to be rebooted, which was actually a really cool scene. If you remember from the season 3 finale, Darkblood actually had a plan to conjure someone to hell. Well, it turns out it was actually Nolan, but it has not been working. He tries once again out of desperation, but this time he loosens the roll of the spell, resulting in Invincible being the one that is dragged down to hell. So Darkblood introduces Mark to the Underwrem, which is like hell, but not in the way we typically think of it. It's located deep within the earth and doesn't have anything to do with any religion. He explains how many years ago, the Vile brutally rolled over the entire planet for millions of years. The demons are the ones who drove the Vile monsters from the surface into the Underwrem, where they were imprisoned and tortured to be kept weak. Although they did this because they loved the torture, they inadvertently helped humanity by allowing them to evolve relatively safely with only a few low-tier monsters breaking out to the surface every once in a while. Volcanica's goal is to release the Vile to kill all humans on Earth, because she really hates them for some reason. So Mark agrees to fight on the side of the devil and stop her. To start, they have to retrieve the devil's crown in order to restore his powers. This crown is guarded by the three-headed dog, Cerberus, who is normally depicted as guarding the gates of hell. Although we don't see any of this fight, instead, Mark throws Darkblood up so high that by the time he comes back down, Mark already has the crown. Watching the devil turn back into his true form was so good, at first, because he slowly transformed, and based off of Mark's reaction, you'd think he was terrifying. But when it reveals what he looks and sounds like, it's kind of clear that he is a joke. And that's proven later when they confront Volcanica. Mark was told to focus on the Magma Knights, but when he's seen all the demons had lost, he steps in and one punches her. Or two punches. Well, actually 3. Like I said at the beginning, she can always come back. After she lost her head a few times, she tells Mark she won't forget this and retreats. Then we get to see what one of the vial looks like. Mark is able to push it back into the lava fairly easily, although he does get a scratch from it, so they're strong enough to penetrate Viltrumite's skin. As a reward for their hard work, both Mark and Darkblood get sent back to the surface. Mark makes it home, and Debbie reveals to him and Oliver that she's selling the house and they're all moving in with Paul. They're both upset by the news, but Mark has already been to hell and back, so he goes outside to get some air. That's when Eve shows up with some even more good news. But right before she reveals her pregnancy, Omni-Man and Alan show up to draft Mark for the Viltrumite War. This man cannot catch a break, but we can, because it ends here with a cliffhanger. In the comics, Paul and Debbie never plan to move in together. And when Mark and Eve are talking, he tells her he's done killing people. But that never happens in the show, which is for the best, because the rest of the season is about the Viltrumite War. The ending scene shows Satan telling Darkblood that he might come up to the surface to cause some problems soon. I imagine this won't happen this season, but it could happen next season, especially since I think it'll tie into Volcanica's role in the comic. In conclusion, a lot of people seem to be calling this a boring, filler episode, but I enjoyed Mark's dynamic with Darkblood. Although I do agree it gets a little boring at times, but don't worry, if you didn't like this episode, the next one is looking absolutely crazy, and I'll be covering it here. So subscribe to Omniverse 21, like, and comment your thoughts on episode 4. Thanks for watching.